gotta try this.
Welcome back, my beautiful people, to STR News Digest, your go-to place for everything related to short-term rentals, travel, and the business of hospitality. Today, I've got a short show today. I'm at the vineyard. I'm super busy, and we have entered technically the shoulder season, which is term for the slow season in travel and STR. And we're going to talk a little bit about taking advantage of that. But that's one of the stories that I want to get into today is going to be having a checklist. I just happened to read an article, a very good article that a company called IMES put out. And in the article, they talked about the importance of having an Airbnb inspection checklist. So if you are a short-term rental manager, I highly recommend, and most people do, but most people throughout time get lazy and they stop using it. But an inspection can be having an inspection and a checklist and doing that probably can be the difference between a glowing review and definitely a guest complaint. I can tell you that from my personal experience, in the beginning, it was super easy. When I first started, and I always tell the story, it took me 2 years to become profitable. I mean, I was operating at a loss for my first 2 years in business. And it was easy because my first 2 years in business, I didn't have a lot of properties. I remember getting my first 2 properties very easily. Now, keep in mind that I was already managing my own properties, but properties that I was managing for other people. And when I first started the business, I only had 2 properties that weren't mine. The rest were mine, 2 that weren't mine. So I had a pattern, and I was consistent with my pattern. I didn't really have anything documented. It wasn't until my 3rd year in business that I blew up and exploded, and that I started hiring people. But in that frenzy of hiring staff, I dropped the ball in the early stages. I didn't create the proper policies and procedures, and I definitely didn't have a checklist, right? So as we started to grow fast, steps were being missed, which is why I highly recommend that you have a checklist, because this checklist covers everything from safety features like smoke detectors, fire extinguishers, to small but crucial touches like extra linen, making sure that there's extra linen in the closet, make sure that you have enough toiletries for your guests, depending on the stay, making sure that all the appliances are working, making sure that the remote is working and that somebody didn't steal the batteries or the batteries didn't die. Now, one of the things, just a quick pro tip on remote controls. I highly recommend that you screw on the back, right? You see that a lot in hotels. In fact, most hotels do it. But I highly recommend that it's really easy to get a small screw this on. Just make it a little bit more difficult for someone to take out the batteries, because I can't tell you how many times people stole the batteries out of the remote control. And in the beginning, when we didn't have that part of our checklist, we missed that. And it's annoying to get a phone call at 10:30 at night that the remote control isn't working for the TV, right? But making sure you have that. So that checklist is important. The article on IMES, just Google IMES and you'll see that article. It's a great article. They give you a PDF there as well as a very generic checklist. But I highly recommend that you create your own that's specific to your property. Every property is going to be different. So it's important that you have SOPs for every specific property. Now, you can have SOPs that will run across, all properties, but there's every property is unique. Every property has a different dynamic to it. So there should be differences in your SOPs. Again, people, also, quick reminder, if you're watching live, first of all, thank you for watching. I see that, let me see my count. I see that there are a few of you that are currently watching. Thank you. Don't forget to comment below. I'm going to have a Q&A at the end of this. So list your questions. Lorena will track them, and then I'm going to go over all the questions as soon as I get done with these few headlines. It's really not a lot. But again, if you're watching on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, thank you for watching. Don't forget to comment. If you're not subscribed, subscribe. I look at my analytics all the time, and the great majority that watch my channel are, number one, not subscribed, and number two, are not commenting. Just, it's for the algorithm, right? What helps these channels, it's not the subscriber count. I don't care about my subscriber count. What helps the channel is the engagement with people that watch. So if you are a regular, and you want to help this channel, comment, say something, okay? Let's see. Oh, here's what I want. We're entering the slow season, as I mentioned, right? And I always get asked this question, and I'm going to answer it here. And the question is, number one, how is the short-term rental market today? And number two, what are the pros and cons of being a host, specifically an Airbnb host? Now, let's specifically talk about the current state of the market. The market is, I've mentioned this multiple times. If you're a subscriber, you already know this. If you're a loyal listener, you already know this. The market is it's oversaturated. There's a lot of short-term rentals currently today. So in order to stand out, in order to be profitable, you have to go beyond what the normal is, and you have to provide a unique experience. Every company, doesn't matter what division or what entity you are, if you are part of the travel industry in general, things are tough today, right? It's become kind of difficult. The demand is there. There's tons of travelers. I already mentioned how Japan has broken records. We broke records. There's a record number of visitors booking on Airbnb. The problem is that there's also record number of competitors. There's a lot of people in the game today. So we're all competing for that same piece of the pie, right? And that pie is, although it's growing, it's not growing at the rate of the supply, right? It's a typical supply and demand issue. So again, is the market, if the question is, how's the market? The market is good, it's stabilized. But if you're in the game, it depends on who you are and who you work with. Because I can tell you, I know there's a lot, because I get the questions, I get the comments, oh, I'm not doing well. There's a reason why a lot of people aren't doing well. And it's not because there isn't demand. It's just because you're not doing the right things to stay ahead of the game, okay? Now, let's talk about the pros and cons of Airbnb, right? The pros are pretty clear for me anyways. Number one is the flexibility of income. So that for me is clear. The potential of making a very good living as a short-term rental host is there. I mean, I've been blessed that my company's doing well, and I've been blessed that I've been able to create a business that has generated more money than I ever thought possible. Super blessed for that. Number two is the global reach, right? As a short-term rental operator, doesn't matter where you are in the world, you have a global reach. You have the ability to attract guests from all over the world, right? You're not limited, like for example, a coffee shop is limited to its geographic area, right? You're limited to what's available within that coffee shop. as a short-term rental operator, you're not. You have a global reach, a global market to attract people to come stay at your property. Next is going to be the ability to be extremely creative with what the product that you want to present. Meaning, if you know, I talked about experiences before. So in order to stand out today, in order to be in that 10% tier of people making money on short-term rentals, you have to be creative, and creative in the sense of providing or taking a space and providing a unique experience with that space, right? So that, and the challenge of that for me is extremely rewarding. So that's a pro as well. But here comes the cons, right? And the cons are the following. Number one, I'm going to talk about the work. It's a lot of freaking work, people. The time commitment is unreal in this industry. This is why it really bothers me when I hear quote unquote gurus and people on the internet trying to sell the Airbnb game as a passive game. It's only passive if you are an owner of a property and you hand that property over to us or a company like us, right? And all you're doing is providing the property and we're doing all the work. But as an operator, as a host, man, it's a lot of work. So the time commitment. Next is going to be the unpredictability, or being unpredictable, right? You're dealing with the public, people, and today's day and age, dealing with the public has become extremely difficult for many reasons. And I'm not going to get into those reasons now, because if I do, I will definitely go down a rabbit hole, because I think today society in general is rude. Society in general is inconsiderate. Society in general feels like they're entitled to certain things. So it's difficult. So dealing with the public is another con, because they're unpredictable. Next, which is a big challenge, especially if you're in a major city, and it's the ever increasing struggles with regulations, right? I've been talking about Spain or Europe in general, but specifically Spain, like Barcelona, how they're making it almost impossible to have a short-term rental management business, because they're not allowing people to use the standard residential home and convert that to a short-term rental. So regulations is an issue. Now, I'm not going to talk about how we are overcoming those regulation issues today, but understand that there are workarounds. But that's a serious issue. The next thing is that it's a con, is the fact that a lot of people think that they can do this job and do it well part-time. You can't, man. There's no way. Not if you want to make money, right? If you own a property and you want to manage yourself and you want to do it part-time, but you don't care about the revenue, then by all means, that's fine. But if you care about revenue, if you care about providing a unique experience, no freaking way you can do this part-time. It's not happening. So that's the con. And then the last thing I'll talk about that's also a con about this business is that it's tough to predict the future. This all could go away tomorrow, right? All it takes is, like I mentioned, Barcelona. All it takes is one governmental entity to say, we don't want this anymore, and they can do away with it. Again, there is a workaround for you to be safe. I'm not going to touch on it in this video, but like, for example, with me, I'm doing a lot of things different, so that I can protect myself, protect my company, and make sure that my staff and my owners are staying profitable if there's ever an issue when it comes to regulation. Anyway, moving on, the last thing I'm going to talk about before I go into the Q&A is going to be Frontier. Okay, Frontier Airlines is they're trying to take a huge market share away from Spirit Airlines, right? And they're doing it in a couple of different ways, but I'll touch on it. The major way that they're trying to impede and take away market share from Spirit, and that is through a bunch of new routes. Now, I talked about, and we'll see what happens. You know, I can't predict the future, but I don't think it's going to affect Spirit as much as it would have 2 years ago, and here's why. I already talked about how Spirit Airline doesn't want to be known as a budget airline anymore. Their new CEO has made some huge changes in how Spirit Airlines is operating and how people perceive Spirit Airlines, right? I talked about how they're moving into the business class. They added premier seats. They're trying to create a more or cater to those individuals that are looking for a better experience or more business class, first class, premier experience within the travel industry. So they're trying to target that group. So they're doing away from the budget airline. Frontier is still a budget, like bottom budget airline. So by going, you know, from a business standpoint and Frontier's point of view, they're seeing what Spirit is doing, and they're trying to capitalize by saying, you know what, if they want to get away from the budget airline market, let's jump in and take some of their customers. They still want that budget airline or want those budget airfares, right? So they just created a bunch of new routes. I'm super excited to see which routes they're going to be taking, but I know they're increasing. I forget how many flights. I think it's like 32 flights. Their full itinerary is not out yet, but they're talking about adding like 32 routes out of Fort Lauderdale alone, right? Which is cool for me because I'm based out of Fort Lauderdale, and if I'm flying 3 hours or less, I can care less on what seat I'm in or if they're providing me chips or not. I don't care, right? I just want a cheap flight because I'm traveling 3 hours or less. Now, if it's longer than that, I gotta fly business class. So, but nonetheless, that's interesting news about Frontier and how they're trying to take market share from airlines. So, having said all that, Lorena, let's open it up for Q&A. Let me know if we have any questions.
Yes, we have one from Verushka Ramos from Orlando. She said, I'm starting in the business and I want to know what are the biggest mistakes new hosts make when starting in short-term rentals?
Okay, I already touched on some of the mistakes, right? Number one is, I'm going to give you the biggest mistake in a second. But number one is it's not understanding not understanding what it takes to run a successful management business. That's number one, right? You got to be professional. You got to treat this as a full-time job. If you're thinking about doing this part-time, that's a big mistake, and I've already talked about that. So I think mistake number one will be thinking they can do this part-time. Mistake number two is thinking that that you know how to price a property. That's mistake number two, right? I've been in this business for an extremely long time. I know the market fairly well, but even I don't put the pricing on my property. I use software and data to tell me what I should price a property at, right? The problem is with new short-term rental managers, especially if they own the property, they think that their property is the best property in the world and they can demand huge dollars. The market doesn't work like that, right? Today's traveler, the number one consideration is pricing, right? That's number one. And today's travelers, traveler, they want more for what they're paying for. That's why experiences have been exploding, because the way a company can give you more without adding more cost is through experiences. So that's those. I would say those are the two major mistakes. What's the next question?
Perfect. He said, like, thank you. It was so helpful. Okay, the next question is, how can I identify if my property is underperforming compared to the market or the competition?
Oh, good question. And today it's easy. There's plenty of software or data companies out there that you can tap into to see how your property is performing. But let's assume that you don't want to pay for AirDNA, price labs, or anything like that. If you go into your, for example, Airbnb account, you can see in your account how you are performing over the market. So there is a tab in there called Insights that'll tell you how you're ranking as it relates to specific markers, right? So, or KPIs, right? So you can look at through there. But I highly recommend that you really invest in a data company, either Key Data, AirDNA, Price Labs. Those are all three very good data companies, and pull the research for your specific area. And remember, compare apples to apples. So, for example, if you have a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, don't compare yourself to a 5-bedroom, 5-bedroom, 6-bath house. They're not the same. So, and don't compare yourself again to a property that may be on your same block, but that property has been on the market for several years versus you. And I'm going to explain that really. I'm trying to explain that really quick. Time on the market really matters. And a property that has been proven to do well in the market will continue to do well, because the algorithm on these platforms will push it, because it's a proven property. As a new property, you're not proven yet, right? The market doesn't know if you're going to be successful or not. That takes 6 months to a year before the market. And when I say the market, I'm talking about the platforms, the OTA platform, Verbal, Booking, Airbnb. They don't know if your property is successful yet, because they need to get the data from that. So when you're comparing your property, compare your property to a similar property that's been on the market a similar time. Hopefully that makes sense.
Perfect. So the next one is like, should I lower my night rates in low season, or there are smarter or better strategies?
Okay. Yeah. Simply lowering your pricing is not the way to do it. This is why, again, I'm going to say you need a pricing software. The pricing software will tell you, will dictate what the market is. And I'm going to give you a great example of what I mean by that, right? We're in August. It's considered, we're going into, summer's almost over, going into the slow season. And for example, in September, which is one of the slowest months out of the year, if you look at my calendar, in my calendar, you'll have let's say a Saturday, at the nightly rate for that Saturday and Sunday, it's like, let's say $200. But that Friday could have been $75, or that Monday could have been $100. It just depends on what the traveler is actually doing, and how your property is performing in terms through click through rate, conversions, and what the demand is for travel at those particular days. That's why you can't just say, I want $200. It's September's coming, slow season. I'm going to put my property at $200, which is, it might be $100 less for the rest of the month, and just put that for every day. No, it doesn't work like that. You're going to get days where the travel demand is higher. And I'll use this image or this concept for you to understand. It's like buying an airline ticket, right? When you buy an airline ticket, it could be $50 today, but tomorrow it can be $250. Or this morning you check on JetBlue and the ticket is worth $100, and then you don't buy it, and then tonight you decide to buy it and you go on there and that ticket's $150 now, right? It's going to vary, and it varies based on when you buy, when you click, and what the algorithm is dictating what that property is worth at that particular moment when someone's booking. Hope that makes sense.
Perfect. Valentina from Colombia, she is asking like, how can I improve my occupancy rate throughout the year?
Well, that's a tough question for me to answer because I don't know what you're specifically doing. But I'm going to tell you what we do to increase our occupancy rate. Marketing, 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 right? We wrote an ebook specifically on this. And I highly recommend you pick up my ebook, Valentina, so you can understand how to properly market your property. So that is the only way. I mean, there's a lot of small factors or contributing factors to occupancy rate. Pricing, I've already talked about how important pricing is. I've already talked about how important providing a guest experience is. I talked about time on the market. But more above all that is marketing. You need eyes on your property. If no one's looking on your property, then no one's booking it. So the more eyes on it, the more chances you get to get somebody interested in booking that specific property. So pick up my ebook, learn everything you can about marketing, and market the crap out of your property.
Awesome. And the last one, he said like from Miami, he said like, what upgrades or services can increase guest demand even during off-peak times?
I'm going to give you the top 3 amenities that I believe you should have on your property that helps with that. But in terms of services, that varies greatly. I would say have the ability to provide as many services as possible for your guests. Be that concierge that someone would get at the Ritz. If they were stay at the Ritz and go down to the concierge, that guy will be able to provide everything for them. So be that guy, right? And have those services available. But in terms of amenities, I've already talked about this in nauseam. Number 1, and make sure you market this. Number 1 is having a phenomenal coffee station. I can't tell you how important having the better the coffee station is, the better chances you are to get booked. Number 2 is going to be having a workstation, ability for someone to work, right? Ability for someone to go in and work on their laptop or whatever, but a quiet spot for someone to get some work done. That's going to be number 2. And then the last amenity that I think everyone does have it, but for some reason people are cheap, and that's having the best Wi-Fi on the planet, right? Everyone has Wi-Fi in their short-term rental store, or at least I would hope everyone does. And when I first started this, that was a premium, bro. To go to a short-term rental and get Wi-Fi, it was a luxury. Today, almost everyone has Wi-Fi. But here's the problem. People go cheap and people get the lowest megabytes. No, man. Today, you'll have a family of, let's say a family of 5. All 5 people will have devices. And your TV, most people are going to stream on a TV. They have to be able to stream something, and all 5 people need to be able to get on their phone without having issues with their Wi-Fi. So those are the amenities. Hope I answered your question, but you can't go wrong if you have those.
Perfect. just like in Facebook, someone say like Richard Lee, say like hi Fernando, just like say hi.
Who's that? Who's that?
Richard,
Oh,
Richard Lee. Hmm.
yeah. What's up?
Perfect. Yeah, I think that is all the question that we have today.
All right, my beautiful people. Thank you for watching. Again, if you haven't commented already, I see a couple of people commented. I appreciate you guys. Comment something. If you're watching this on playback, definitely comment. Uh, love you guys. I will see you on the next one.